Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion. Today's poetry discussion comes to us from Langston Hughes, the poem in question, Mother to Son, and it reads as such. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places where no carpet on the floor. Bare. But all the time, I's been a-climbin' on, and reachin' landin's and turnin' corners, and sometimes goin' in the dark, where there ain't been no light. So, boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps, 'cause you finds it's harder, 'cause you finds it's kinder hard. Don't you fall now, for I's still goin', honey. I's still climbin'. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. This poem is, like many great poems, a moment. This poem is a specific moment, and probably many men have been here. This poem is happening to our speaker. And it is happening to our speaker on the heels of our speaker, I don't want to say complaining about something, but probably complaining about something, right? Talking about how something's too hard. Talking about how something is not going his way. And nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing will make you feel more like a punk. Nothing will make you feel like a punk faster than your mother telling you, and I walked uphill both ways in the snow story, right when you thought you had it hard. I think many men have been here. On the precipice of quitting something, on the precipice of stopping something, some place where the woe is me is starting to set in. And there's no one there to listen. There's no one there to feel sorry for you. There's no one there even to play witness, except for your mother. And in this instant, your mother has a very difficult choice to make. Does she coddle? I have to imagine, to a very large degree, that is the parental instinct. The parental instinct to say, hey, look, everything's going to be okay. Or does she break you? Does she break you by communicating the fact that, hey, don't be a bitch. Your mama has been through twice as bad. Probably I should not share a story from my mother, but I'm going to anyway. Look, there is an ever greater conversation to be had about the differences between generations. And I think we're getting into an accelerating area. So, I don't have any kids, but I have a niece. I have a 4-year-old niece. And the thing she absolutely loves to do is run around with this iPad. And it's always got queued up her favorite show. And the difference is, like, I remember, and not to get into the uphill both ways in the snow, yada yada, but for a child that young, I'm 36, 32-year difference. When I was a kid, my family had 2 televisions. One of them was black and white. 2, running around at 4 years old with an iPad that always has cued your favorite television show. Now, that's me to her. My mother, 27 years older than me. And I don't remember what I was telling her. I was going through a rough time. I don't remember what it was. And we just started sort of sharing stories, which is always a terrible idea. Your parents had it much harder than you. Just think about the things that we take for granted that were not taken for granted in their day. And I don't remember what it was. I think I had gotten sick. Didn't have insurance, not going to the doctor, so there was a difference, right? When my mother was my age and she got sick, even if she didn't have insurance, she could afford to go to the doctor. Doctor couldn't do anything for you, right? Because you're talking the 70s, but she could go. Maybe they'd wave a fishbone at it, right? A little bit of voodoo and magic would make things okay. Certainly didn't have science in the 70s, right? But she shared a story with me when she was younger, during her days of struggle. She had to get a tooth pulled. Fortunately, I've never had to do this. She had to get a tooth pulled, didn't have insurance. So she went to the clinic. The clinic was where they had students doing things. And she told me this story about this little fella who was going to school to be a dentist. And this little fella, little, not big, ended up, and they had local anesthesia. They weren't putting you under. Not at the free clinic. They were numbing it and going to town, baby. This little fella couldn't get the tooth out. So he put one hand on her shoulder and was trying to crank it out. Wouldn't work. So he put his knee on her chest, trying to get this thing out. Wouldn't work. He ended up crawling up on the chair, knee across her neck, to get the goddamn tooth out. Nothing will make you think, well, getting over strep throat takes a little bit of time. Nothing will make you think that. Quite like a story from the free dental clinic. But I want to talk a little bit about this poem. The symbol which is most readily available from this poem is the symbol of stairs. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, I's been a climbing on. So the interesting thing here to me, the entire time I've been climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners. So the interesting thing about this to me, stairs go up and down. But the argument here is never made by the mother figure that these stairs, these life stairs, have been utilized on the way down as well. They've only been climbed. And she makes the point to say to him, don't you fall now. The risk reward to stairs, and I know this is very, why are you taking things so literally with a symbol? The literal part of symbols is what makes them powerful. The risk reward to stairs is as such. You can use them to climb. You use them to get higher. You use them to go someplace else. But along that way, it's not like falling on flat ground. When you are striving to get to a higher place, if you fall, it is a different degree of falling. If you fall, not only do you go down, right? Walking on flat land, you fall, sucks, hurts. You're not moving forward anymore. But with stairs, you fall. You're not just falling, you're moving backwards and down. And the consequences for falling downstairs much higher. So this is a life lesson, right? Coming to us from the mother figure. When you're using the stairs, you're moving up, you're moving forward. If you're walking on flat land, you're moving forward. You're not moving up, but you're progressing through life, nonetheless. Traveling on stairs, moving up, moving forward, not only is the work harder, it's harder to walk up steps than across flat land. That's why athletes utilize steps, right? That's why they do stadiums, right? It's harder than just running. But there's more reward. You're going to get to a place where you can see further. You're going to get to a higher elevation. So there's the risk reward paired with the catastrophe. Now, this poem, I believe, written in 1920 or published in 1922. You break a leg in 1922, a lot more dangerous than today, right? Just like I was saying with the story with my mother, they didn't have medicine in the 70s, didn't exist, nothing. I mean, no anesthesia, no nothing. 70s, very old. 1922, much different ball game. You break your leg, right? Falling down the stairs, you break your leg. So I want to look at that final line here. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's a repeat line. But by the time we get it again, it has accrued so much meaning because of the intervening explication. Because of, we understand a little bit further what it means, crystal stair. Crystal stairs, okay, well, but it ain't been no crystal stair because it's had tacks and splinters and boards torn up, places with no carpet on the floor, just bare. But it never stopped our mother figure. It never stopped Mom. And it is so important to get that line reiterated because what happens off camera, what happens before the poem, is that our speaker here, well, it's difficult to say speaker because the speaker, the person saying these things, is the mother. But we're not getting this poem from the mother. We're getting it presumably from the receiver of these words, right? So I'm not real sure how to speak about that in this poem. But the son character, what happens off camera with this individual is that he has been complaining about something. He has obviously stated that something might be too hard. The second time, the first time we get that statement, life for me ain't been no crystal. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. That time where we get that line, the first time we get that line, it's sort of this don't be a punk line, right? Look, I'll tell you. For me, life ain't been no crystal stair. The second time we get it, it is illustrative of the fact that there is a great difference between our speaker, between the son and the mother. it is not just illustrative of that, it is explicative of that. It denotes that. Shows the son character. There's great differences between you and me. But it is not a dismissal. It is not to say that to have these feelings is invalid. It is not to say that, hey, being a punk is not allowed. It's just saying, you're being a punk. It is the statement that the expectation is wrong, but that you are not wrong to have it. The expectation that what it is you're trying to do, that you're finding too hard, should be easy, that expectation is wrong. But you're not wrong for having that expectation. It is wrong. The expectation is wrong. You are not wrong for having it. So this is a poem that starts off showing a chasm. Hey, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. Insinuating a little bit, you've had it pretty easy, bud, right? By the time we get to the end, it is a poem that draws those characters, mother and son, back together. One of the things that is so compelling about Langston Hughes' poetry is that Langston Hughes seems to be a voice arguing for closeness from afar. Langston Hughes is often making the case. Someone might be wrong. There's still someone. Langston Hughes often is making the case that we're all in this together. And it's a weird sort of case for someone like Langston Hughes to be making. This is someone who was so different, especially in his time. There are many points of contention between Langston Hughes and civil society, as it were. There are many points of contention between Langston Hughes and the common American, as it were. But he's always making the argument that he is civil. He's always making the argument that he is American. The argument from Langston Hughes of similarities being greater than differences is something which is always sort of roiling under the surface of his poetry. That is all that I have for this poetry discussion. I hope to have you back for the next poetry discussion I have on this channel, poetry review I have on this channel, short story discussion, short story review, novel read along, whatever it is I'm doing on this channel, as long as it has to do with literature. I hope to have you there. Go away.